its energy.
We have not
Once
done it.
a country yields its agriculture.
Wrong
Once
again.
a country opens itself up to a subsidy war with the United States
Wrong
on
again.
terms of definition, then the political ability of this country to sustain the influence of the United States, to remain as an independent nation, that is lost forever, and that's the issue of this election.
Mr. Turner, I today, sir, as a Canadian, believe genuinely in what I am doing. I believe it is right for Canada. I believe that in my own modest way, I am nation building because I believe this benefits Canada and I love Canada.
We built a country, east and west and north. We built it on an infrastructure that deliberately resisted the continental pressure of the United States. For 120 years, we've done it. With one signature of a pen, you've reversed that, thrown us into the north-south influence of the United States, and will reduce us, I'm sure, to a colony of the United States, because when the economic levers go, the political independence is sure to follow.
A milestone in the debate back on July 25th, 1988, in the federal election campaign, then Prime Minister Brian Mulroney, who had just put together the North American Free Trade Deal, and Liberal leader John Turner opposed to the deal all the way. And when you listen to some of the points that Turner made, the chickens have come home to roost, so to speak. Well, Trump has pushed the tariff button, then hit pause. The threatened 50% tariffs are delayed for 3 days, while Canada and the U.S. try to turn a tentative agreement into an actual deal. This is how Trump announced it last night, basically minutes before the deadline. I have paused the 50% tariffs against Canada that were scheduled to kick in tomorrow morning for a 3-day period, based on the fact that Canada and the USA, subject to the finalization of documents, have a deal. The great Keystone XL pipeline, long ago killed by sleepy Joe Biden, may be awoken from the grave. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Donald J. Trump. And he followed that up with, of course, that. Another AI-generated image of him, being the hero and pulling a Keystone pipeline out of the ground. And a lot of people that I was watching today, they're all kind of scratching their heads trying to figure out, where did this Keystone pipeline bit come from? Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering the same thing. So we have that. Right. And as I say, going back to that debate back in 1988, wow, when I watched that and I remember the debate, that was a turning point in the campaign. However, the Conservatives, Mulroney and the Conservatives, went on to win the election anyhow. But boy, did Turner ever drive home some good points when you really, really think about it. At least I think that they were good points. So what are we dealing with here? All right, so we have 3 days. It's not a deal. It's paused for 3 days to, as he calls it, formalize the deal. The tariffs would affect roughly $20 billion in Canadian goods, probably closer to about $28 billion. Trump says the two countries have a deal subject to final documents. Carney says significant progress has been made, but negotiations aren't finished.
Right.
And that seemed to be what they were talking about today, in like when I saw a clip of Dominique LeBlanc and Greer as well talking about it. So let's look at it. 3 days isn't a deal, but the immediate tariff threat has been avoided, even though temporarily. The question now, Eddie, is whether negotiators can close the remaining gaps before the pause expires, or Trump has another dream. What's Canada giving up? This is the question most Canadians want to know. Yeah. The emerging agreement reportedly involves market access, economic security provisions, and digital trade, while major disputes remain around automobiles, dairy, and alcohol. What did we have to concede to get Trump to hit pause? Who blinked first? Well, Trump called it a deal. Carney says work remains. That's an important difference. If the final agreement doesn't materialize, Canada hasn't actually escaped the tariff threat. It has simply bought another 72 hours. Why does it all matter? Well, we avoided immediate 50% tariff shocks but the uncertainty isn't over. The next 3 days may tell us whether this was a breakthrough or just another Trump deadline extension. And so, Eddie, it begins.
Yeah. Okay. You know what? First thing I thought of was taco this morning when I read the headlines. I don't think this is a taco situation at all in this particular case. I think he's got something up his sleeve, or in his mind, he believes that he's got to win. Now, we always talk about the psyche and the nature of the president, and it's all about him being able to justify that he's got to win somewhere, or he's got a major win, a win that nobody's ever seen before. Um, so I think a lot of this is for him to start banging his drum now until there is some sort of a deal. And it doesn't matter whether Canada conceded or the United States conceded. It's going to come out as a massive win for the Trump administration, even though it may not be. So I think this is all about him getting himself some extra time to be able to get the propaganda machine under the president to be able to prepare all the accolades associated with this long-standing tariff challenge with the nasty people called Canadians and come out a winner. He needs any possible win he can get under his belt with the midterms coming up. And I mean, right now, I think it's election win by the Democrats in electorates and so on and so forth. I think the count is 42-0 right now in the past 18 months. So he's trying to find any possible win and put anything under his belt that he can claim victory, even though it may not be a victory. I mean, look, the war with Iran is what, 43, 44 victory declarations so far, and counting. So it's just a little bit of a break for him to gain more time to get his propaganda machine going. Now, here's the danger, Gary. Let's get aside from the concessions that we as Canadians or Carney representing Canada may or may not have made in order to get this deal moving forward. The problem is the administration south of us who we're dealing with, their leader can have a bowel movement or fill his diapers next week, next month, and whatever paper this was written on in terms of an agreement or an MOU is basically worthless. So even if we concede today or don't concede today, we're going to be dealing with this again in 2 weeks, in 4 weeks, in 2 months, because it's been shown that the United States under the current administration just don't honor any deals that they sign. They've done that to Canada. They've done that to just about every country in the world. And even when a country has stepped forward and says, yes, Mr. Trump will agree to your tariffs, yada, yada, he'll go back and say, oh, too bad, I'm going to tariff you some more. So you can't depend on these guys. I mean, you can't conduct business with an entity that has absolutely zero loyalty to following the rules of a contract. So, Gary, what are we actually winning with this? And I know the peanut gallery is going to come out and toss eggs at us, but whatever Carney is doing or whatever he's not doing, our peanut gallery here in Canada are going to bitch and complain about about where he's failed. And you know what? Even if we had good old Brian Mulroney on the table right now and negotiating with the Trump administration, whatever he came out with, he would be rendered a complete failure as well, because you can't negotiate with people that that you can't trust, are not true to their word, and they will not follow a contract. They will not follow a law. So what do you do about something like this? And I'm of the opinion that the Canadian government, while they have to deal with the United States because they still remain one of our largest customers, and vice versa, we're the United States' largest customer, we still have to be able to conduct a reasonable amount of business with them to actually sustain and take care of our Canadian interests and businesses. But all the while, continue to enhance our exports and our relationships with other countries in the world while we're weaning ourselves away from the United States. Things don't happen in 12 months. Things don't happen in 18 months. This is a slow, painful process. And at some point, I really believe we're going to be doing more business with the rest of the world, where the rest of the world is going to be our biggest customers, and the United States won't. But it's not going to happen today or tomorrow. And the peanut gallery are going to come out and claim failure in whatever Prime Minister Carney had been able to manage and succeed. And whatever he does, whatever he accomplishes, Gary, next month you and I are going to have a show about, yep, Trump screwed us over again.
Oh, no question.
That's my take. Yeah.
He was quoted this morning as saying that Canada and the U.S. have reached a very fair deal for both countries. And, he was pausing the 50% tariffs on a broad range of Canadian goods. Trump says tariffs on U.S. farm goods are going to be wiped out, basically. And when the deal is finalized, Canada also has tariffs on some dairy imports that exceed a set quota, but American producers so far do not export enough dairy to meet Canadian tariff rate quota thresholds. Now, here's the thing with the dairy. When you look at the difference between the inspection levels for Canadian milk versus U.S. milk, you look at what's not allowed, that cows are not allowed to have, and what's not allowed to be present in Canadian milk versus what is present in, including growth hormones and what, on it goes, in U.S. milk. I don't care if it's $6 cheaper a quart or whatever. I'm not going to buy it. I don't want to put it in my body. Do you?
No.
Now, here's something that just came in too. As part of the negotiations, the Prime Minister asked the premiers to consider putting U.S. alcohol back on liquor store shelves. Nova Scotia Premier Tim Houston said, put it back on the shelves. I think the majority won't buy it anyway. Damage is done. Well, Tim, you must have been reading my mind because I ain't buying it.
Well, you know what? What were the latest? I think they took another set of polls across the country last week. I think it was while I was away. I saw something online where we're up at about 80% plus Canadians surveyed had said that even though U.S. alcohol, wine, and spirits, if they did come back on the shelves, 80% plus said they will never, ever buy American alcohol again. So, you know what? The damage really has been done. And I'm with you, Gary. I haven't touched it since these tariffs came imposed on us and once we were threatened with 51st statehood. I haven't touched a drop of American hooch since. And quite frankly, neither of us, neither you or myself, I don't miss it at all.
Nope, not at all. And I've discovered some new Canadian products that I really do like and like a lot better than the bourbon that I used to buy. Now, having said that, Trump is again bragging this deal is a great deal for the U.S. And I go back to, how many years ago was it now? When in his first term, he renegotiated the free trade agreement, the North American Free Trade Agreement, and it evolved into CUSMA here, what we call CUSMA in Canada, and the USMCA, that's what they call it in the States. And at that time, he was going on about how great a deal he had negotiated. It's a great deal, the best deal ever.
No one's ever seen one like this, Gary.
That's right. No one.
Yeah.
4 years later, well, not 4, 6, 8 years later.
Yeah.
He's back, and he's saying it's the deal was a piece of garbage.
But you know what?
So what does that tell us?
Nobody holds his feet to the fire. But Mr. Trump, you negotiated. A reporter will not tell him that. I would.
And absolutely, and he's going on about this one being a great deal. Well, how long is that going to last? The shelf life on the great deals with this bird is minimal at best. And I don't think, even if we feel that we did okay on this deal, and that will depend, my feelings anyway, will depend as to how much we had to give in order to get something.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't matter. He's going to be back looking for more inside of 2 or 3 months. Carney met with the cabinet this afternoon. Then he was meeting with the premiers and briefing them. And after that, late this afternoon into this evening, he was going to meet with his advisory council, and then they would start talking to some of the major players involved. But, I watched an interview with a small company in Saskatchewan this afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
The guy, uses steel like he's some kind of a steel, must make some kind of machinery or something. I didn't catch what it was, but a small operation. And he said, it's been tough. It's been really tough over the last while. And he said it would have been a hell of a lot tougher if we had been hit with the 50% tariffs.
Yeah.
But he's not, you could tell he was, I won't say relieved, but it was just sort of like, okay, we've bought some time, basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
But what has it cost us to buy this time? And again, I come back to, I'm concerned about the consent, and negotiations are about making concessions. I understand that, and I get it. And yes, but I know what the other side was coming in, and they were coming in like a freaking steamroller, ready to just roll over us like they've done with a few other countries. And what are those deals worth to those other countries now? And I just worry that, whatever we've given away, it's going to be, if all of a sudden the deal blows up in our face a week, a month, even a year from now, what have we lost? That's right now, that's my greatest
Up until
concern.
that point, yeah. I was, if I might, I was reading an article today by Brian Clow. He's the former deputy chief of staff in the previous government here in Canada. And it's intriguing what he said. I mean, we're talking about concessions, we're speaking about wins, losses for the States and for Canada. He put it very bluntly. A win for Carney, Gary, is basically limiting damage. Just think about that statement. I thought about it, it's like, oh my goodness, this is exactly what we're doing. We are trying to limit as much damage with an administration that's unpredictable. And he goes on to say, we've got to ride out the next 2.5 years of this president, and we're never going to get a great place on trade with this president. He likes his tariffs, so the goal is limiting damage. And in the process of limiting that damage, as you so eloquently put, Gary, how much do we have to give up to minimize the damage that this man has caused to Canadian-U.S. trade, and how much damage has this man caused with his tariffs to the businesses of the United States? I'm not talking about the major corporations. I'm talking about the farmers. I'm talking about the small business owners. I'm talking about the small mechanic shops. These guys are going to get devastated in his own turf. And I guess what kills me and why I feel sorry for the American population, even believe it or not, the folks who voted for this guy, is they're going to be losing their businesses, and he just doesn't give a hoot. He doesn't give a hoot about the people in his country. So why would you and I, as citizens of Canada, consider that he gives a crap about us? He doesn't.
No,
So
he doesn't.
this whole statement that Brian Clow made about a win for Carney is limiting the damage. And I guess it's going to come down to, Gary, how the Canadian public perceives this limited damage, right? We took a few hits here and there. Well, what kind of hits are we talking about already? I mean, look, some of the few concessions, I mean, in the digital world, we talked about that before, Gary, and he was almost nailed to the cross for those things. Well, what's going to happen now? what's the public going to think once all of this finally comes out in terms of what we've won and what we've conceded. Very interesting times ahead of us for the citizens of Canada, and very, very interesting and turbulent times coming up for Prime Minister Carney. Even if he did a stellar job and he worked his ass off on this with his team, there are going to be some losses he's going to have to take a few punches, take 5 steps forward, and maybe this is going to be one of those steps backward during his tenure as during his first term as Prime Minister of Canada.
Well, you mentioned about the fact that the win coming out of this is limiting the amount of damage. And that's not the first time I've heard that. I was watching former Liberal Cabinet Minister Ralph Goodale late this afternoon being interviewed, and he's a member of the Prime Minister's Advisory Committee. And he, in so many words, was saying essentially the same thing. Earlier in the day, I watched an interview with former Conservative leader Erin O'Toole, who's also a member of the Advisory Committee. And again, in so many words, O'Toole said essentially the same thing. It's what did we come away with to minimize the damage, because this is what we're stuck with. And the more you think about that, it's beginning to make sense. Once you get the emotions out of the way,
Yeah.
I've been thinking about it all day, and then now you bring it up again, and the more I think about it, now that my emotions have settled a little bit, it's beginning to make some sense, because we still have 2.5 years with this individual controlling the White House, and we both know, I think as does every Canadian, realize this is not the end. This is just really buying us some breathing room.
Yeah.
But somewhere down the road, probably before Christmas, or maybe just after Christmas, we're going to be going through something like this again, because he's going to have his knickers in a knot over something when he gets up in the morning. And God knows what it will be, and what sort of tariff or economic shot he wants to take at that point in time.
You know what's interesting, Gary? I know you've been scouring the media sites non-stops over the last week or so. Is we're getting very, very, very little in terms of details or high-level topic lines of what's actually being discussed now before the midnight hour and over the next 3 days, over the next 72 hours. Nothing coming out of the Carney camp, Team Canada, and very little, surprisingly, coming out of the American camp. This is new, Gary. By this time, we have all kinds of crap being touted from the United States in terms of what we're talking about and what we're hitting Canada over the head with. Not much at all. I've seen some snippets about possibilities of discussions pertaining to the F-35, Gary. You're talking billions and billions of dollars. They're suspecting the F-35s on the table for discussions. I would imagine that as a holding point for Carney. It would be a big blow to the United States if that was on the tables and we basically said, no, we're not taking your F-35s. Personally, I like to tell them, yeah, we're going to take your F-35s and not do it. But that's just me. But yeah, that's the thing, Gary. We've heard very, very, very little in terms of what's being discussed. And you know what? I kind of prefer that. A negotiation is usually confidential until you have something to communicate jointly with your counterpart across the table, shake hands and say, this is what we've accomplished. That's not going to happen here. You know that as well as I do. There won't be any joint discussions or joint presentations by the leaders of both countries saying, hey, we got a great deal here to speak to the American public and the Canadian public. Trump's going to go a separate way and do everything himself. But yeah, I'm just remarkably surprised there is nothing that's been leaked to the media for us to be able to get our meat hooks in and have discussions. I mean, nothing. Have you heard anything, Gary? I haven't at
Well,
all.
there is the whole thing about the defense side of things and the F-35s. There's also our participation in the Golden Dome, which, if you recall, about 6 months to a year ago, Trump decided that he wanted, I forget, was it $1 billion from Canada to be a part of it?
Oh, it was more. I think it was more than that, my friend. It wasn't just $1 billion. It's quite a few billions.
Okay, so it was in the billions anyway. So,
Yeah.
which, like, what the hell? And I know that there was some talk that that was also going to be part of the defense security aspect of it. And I suspect probably there was discussion the U.S. wants more control of the Arctic as far as defense is concerned, whereas, we're preparing to defend, it's our territory, we're preparing to defend it on our own, and we have, your troops aren't used to fighting in that kind of weather, those kinds of conditions, so just stay away. Let us handle it.
Well,
We have a plan. So I am concerned about that and getting too intertwined with them on a number of defense issues. Again, we're going to have to wait and see as to what comes out of it. I do know, too, that the Americans, when Dominique LeBlanc, our minister responsible, would hold scrums outside following a meeting, and Dominique's very good at not giving anything away, but
yeah.
at least giving the reporters a 10, 15, 20-second clip. The Americans did not like that.
Yeah.
Did not like that at all. And they brought it up. Now, and it's strange because Dominique never said anything, gave anything away. And yet they were very, very upset about it. And then they have the president who will just throw out anything at any time, whether it's on Truth Social or as he's heading to Air Force One or wherever he happens to be. I mean, this morning he was talking about our farmers are going to come into this deal, and they're going to be very, very happy and they're going to have unlimited access and everything. Well, no one else has really said that yet.
Yeah.
So, and again, given the source, the president, you can't believe it anyway until you actually have the hard evidence in front of you, because we all know he exaggerates. He, shall we say, massages the truth or outright lies.
Yeah.
So you can't trust him. But by the same token, again, I do have concerns, and I'm getting more the message of control the damage as much as you can, because, we have another 2.5 years. But I'm also concerned in controlling the damage, what have we given away?
Yeah.
As some of our concessions.
I think a lot will come out next week from this.
I think by the weekend we'll have a pretty good idea, because they're supposed to have the documents formalized, reviewed, and approved. Well, what is it, by Saturday? So, or Friday night, whatever. So I think we'll, and it's starting to come out now because so many people have been briefed, from the cabinet right on through to the advisory committee, and now members in the business community are starting to get some background information as well. So we're going to see it starting to leak out.
Yeah.
And it will be interesting to watch the response of Canadians.
There was something that you just said that made me realize something I didn't realize before. I mean, Yes, these negotiations for NAFTA have everything to do with economies and the business of trade between countries and companies between the countries. It's all about trade and money exchange, right?
Hmm.
And then it just dawned on me that the negotiations may not be confined by the economic bookends of how to conduct business. That the discussions may go into weaponry, that discussions may go into, like you had mentioned, the United States were interested in having more accountability for Arctic sovereignty. What else is being discussed in terms of leverage points that have absolutely nothing to do with the business of trade? It just dawned on me that those discussions could very well be on the table that have absolutely nothing to do with trade. That these things have to be thrown on the table as part of bargaining chips, and what are we willing to throw on the table? Oh, God forbid that we're going towards stuff that are beyond economically motivated conversation. It's that's scary, if you ask
Well,
me. Yeah,
another
just
issue
dawned
that
on me.
concerns me is I saw the other day where one of the demands initially going into it was the U.S. wanted first right of refusal on our critical minerals. Well,
Wow.
who are you to
Tell us who to
say,
sell stuff to, yeah.
yeah, exactly?
Oh my.
So those are things, again, the devil is in the details, and we don't have the details yet, but we know there's a devil lurking overhead as far as
Yeah.
the details are concerned. So those are areas that concern me to a large degree. A large degree. So,
Yeah.
again, we're going to see bits and pieces starting. I would imagine by tomorrow morning, some of the leads in the national papers and on the national news networks will be focused on some of the details
Right.
of the agreement. That is, as the Prime Minister is quick to point out, still being formalized. So, there are loose ends to tie up.
Right.
And who knows, like somebody may have a temper tantrum just as they're getting to the end of the process and getting the loose ends tied up and blows
Boom.
up in our face.
Well, let me, before we get to our takeaway, Gary, let me ask you a final question. So, being the betting man that you are, let's assume that something gets squared away at the end of this week. How much time do you think there is going to pass before this agreement is not worth the paper it's written on?
I would give it 9 months to a year.
9 months to a year? I I would suspect that unless the administration clearly boasts themselves as a winner before the midterms, I actually see this thing going down the toilet in 2 months. 2 months after the end of this week, I can see something happening that would infringe upon the agreement that was signed this week. I give it 2 months, 3 months,
Okay.
October the latest. So we'll see what happens, Gary. We'll
We
see what
are on
happens.
record now.
Yeah, we are. So, my friend, what's the takeaway on this?
Well, Eddie, our takeaway is the tariff threat is paused, but the pressure isn't.